looking at your warm-up question first, and then we will look at your homework. So just to kind of let you know some announcements in case I forget, please make sure I tell Luke these because I know he's not in here right now, but
he's here.
There we go. Oh, hey, Mr. Williams. Your iReady diagnostic. I know that as algebra students, we have not been working on that in class because you have a common assessment next week, and then like 3 weeks after that, you have the EOC. But you are supposed to be working on it during jacket time. So if it is not finished by next Friday, it will be considered a missing assignment for you to not go out next Friday. So please make sure that when you are given time in jacket time that you are using that time, because some of you are sitting at less than 10% after an hour in jacket time, and that doesn't make much sense to me. So make sure you are working during that time. Yes. Monday and Wednesday you were supposed to work on your iReady diagnostic. Tuesday we had the TDA, so we didn't have jacket time. And then today was supposed to be second steps. Or either your IXL for ELA, according to which one your teacher went with for that. It's the guidance lessons that we are supposed to be doing. All right, so right here, page 12, number 2. We had compound interest yesterday, and the formula for compound interest is very similar to the formula for growth and decay. What's the difference between the formula for growth and the formula for decay? There's only one difference. One has a minus and one has a plus. But there's a bigger difference when it comes to compound interest. So at the beginning of both of them, it has the initial value, which you can use A or P to represent that. But P stands for principal, and that's what they're going to refer to when you're getting a mortgage on a house, so you need to start learning that word. Principal is the amount you borrowed to begin with and what you have left you were trying to pay on. And then it's 1 plus. What does that 1 stand for? 100%, because you've got the 100% of the loan or 100% of your savings account there, plus R over N. And what is R? It is plus the decimal in the regular growth one. That is correct. But this is compound interest, so it's slightly different. In compound interest, it's the rate, which you were just saying, divided by N, which is the number of times it's compounded a year. And then in the exponent, it's N times T, which is the number of times a year times the number of years. So the Fresh and Green Company have a savings plan for employees. If employees make an initial contribution of $1,000, where does that go in this formula? In the P or A, according to which formula you're looking at. The company pays 8% interest compounded quarterly. This word right here, compounded, is what told us we need this formula as opposed to the regular growth or decay formula. And so we put 1,000 there. 1 plus. What is our rate as a decimal? 0.08. And it said compounded quarterly. So how many times is that a year? 4. And then in our exponent, we do 4 times. And this first one says 5 years. The second one says 35 years. So what's the only thing that's going to change between our first equation and our second one? Can you say it a little bit louder? The amount of years. So the 5 will become a 35 in the second one. Now, before I give you these answers, I want to point something out to you. When you start your job, one day, feels like a long ways away, but it's really not that far. When you start your job, somebody is probably going to come talk to you. And if they don't, you need to check into it about retirement. And they're going to tell you, if you start preparing for your retirement now, you'll have more money when you retire than if you wait until you get close to retirement to start preparing. And we're going to see a difference here. Now, we're only looking at $1,000 being put in, but you're going to see how much of a difference it makes leaving something in a compound interest for just 5 years as opposed to 35 years. And most people work for around 30 years. So you got to think, if you're putting into this thing from year 1, how much more you're going to have at retirement than if you wait until 5 or 10 years before you retire. So how would I figure out the answer to this problem? Desmos, because we are not about trying to do all of those exponents in our brain, especially on the next one when it's to the 4 times 35th power. And I had it asked this morning, so I'm going to answer now. Are we allowed to use Desmos on the common assessment? Yes. Are we allowed to use decimals on the EOC? Yes. Are we allowed to use decimals on SC Ready? Yes and no. You're allowed to use it on part and not part. It's going to have a calculator part and a no calculator part. And we said this was all to the 5 times 4 power, which is 20th power. So I messed up. What did I type in wrong? Oh, I didn't raise it to an exponent. That's what I did wrong. 20. All right, so the answer here is a long decimal. For money, how many decimal places do we round to? 2 decimal places. So it's $1,485.95. So after 5 years of just $1,000 sitting over to the side, this person now has close to $500 extra that they didn't have. That's half of what they put in, isn't it? After 5 years, they've earned half of what they put in. So think, if they put in $100,000, this would be like an extra $50,000 already after 5 years, right? But how does that differ when we get to 35? It's going to be the same equation, but it's going to be to the 4 times 35 power. So when I go back to decimals, I'm going to change 20. And I learned something this morning. I tried to type 4 times 35 in the exponent, and I could not get it to type in the exponent. So what I had to do, I probably should have put it in parentheses, and that might would have worked. Let's try it. Looky there. If I had done it in parentheses, it would have worked. But you could also come down here and do 4 times 35 and just type in 140 there, and you'd still get the same answer. If you actually put in the exponent, not what I just did there. Dylan, will you close that door, please? So the answer now is $15,996.47. Now you might be saying, Miss Dix, after 35 years, all this person has earned is close to $15,000. Yes, but all they put in was $1,000. Now you got to think, what if you were doing this the whole time you were working and you're putting in a little bit each paycheck? Even if you're just putting in like $20, $30 a paycheck, but you start that from the time you start working. And if you do that for 35 years, when you get out, you're going to have a decent amount of money for retirement to live off of. Because I think some people think when they retire that you just keep getting money to come in. If you haven't put anything aside in retirement, you get nothing. Especially if you own your own business. If you work for a company, like I work for Horry County Schools, which is not a company, it's part of the government, but I work for Horry County Schools, so they put a little bit aside for me out of my paycheck every time, whether I want them to or not. So when I retire from there, I will have a little bit, but it'll be 2/3 of what I make normally. So if I make $1,000 in 2 weeks, I don't know what I make, but if I make $1,000, let's say I make $1,000 a week when I retire. If I do, then that means my paycheck I'll get after retirement will be $660 some a week, but then they're going to take taxes out of that. So that's not going to be as much to live off of what I'm used to. So that's why I need to put a supplement over to the side so I can keep living like I'm used to living. Okay? So life lesson and math lesson here in one spot. Any questions there? Will you have the formula on your test on the common assessment? No. So this formula right here has got to get in your brain. How do I know if I need to use this one or the one without n? The only time I use the one with n is when? If it says the word compounded. Are we good? Because compounded means it happens more than once throughout a year, whereas not compounded means it only happens once a year. Alrighty. Now let's look at your homework. First, I'm just going to call out the answers, and then I will go over any questions that you have. So the first 2 you were supposed to do for homework were number 9 and number 10. Number 9 is B as in boy, and number 10 is C as in cat. I feel like those two were pretty obvious with the answer choices they gave you, but know that the answer choices might be a little bit trickier on the common assessment. So if you have a question about why the answer looks the way it does, I need to know now. The big key is to remember that the root you're taking goes in the denominator and the exponent goes in the numerator. Before I turn the page, polynomials are closed under all operations except for what? Division. They're not closed under division. That means if you divide a polynomial by a polynomial, it's probably not going to be a polynomial. Turn the page. The answer to number 12 is 6x squared plus 11x minus 35. Does anybody need me to go over that problem before I move on? Speak now if everyone holds your peace. All right, 13 we did yesterday. 14. When I did 14, I was standing at the hallway running to help Miss Britt with the coffee machine because it started messing up, and I didn't read the whole problem, and I missed it and gave the wrong answer to my first class. Oh. But thankfully, one person was paying attention and said, Miss Dix, you forgot to, and I looked, and they were right, and I was wrong. So let me show you. If the length and width of the soccer field below is doubled, what is the area of the new field? Guess what word I left out? Doubled. Doubled. Which means I have to do what to each side before I multiply? Multiply it by 2. So if I multiply this side by 2, I get 2x plus 20. And if I multiply this side by 2, I get 2x minus 60. So I multiply 2x plus 20 times 2x minus 60, and I get 4x squared minus 80x minus 1200. Hint, hint, nod, nod, wink, wink. It could say doubled or tripled on the common assessment, so make sure you're paying attention. Don't do like Miss Dix and just say, oh, area, let me multiply. Read the whole sentence. Because I can guarantee you they're going to have the answer down there where it's not doubled for you to pick. Are we good? I can't tell if y'all really know this stuff or you really don't care. I'm not sure. Might be both. And then number 15 had a mistake. The GCF should have been 5x y squared z, not 5y squared z. So right above that, please put that there should have been an x in that expression. And the correct answer is B. How can I mark out C and D automatically? The correct number's not there because this one says the GCF is 5, and if I just look at the numbers part, the GCF between 1 and 5 is not 5, it's 1. So that's why I can mark out C and D because they both have a 1 in the number spot. So I knew it had to be A or B. So now let's talk about the letters. First of all, to be part of the GCF, they both have to have that variable. And second of all, you take the lowest power of that variable. So they both have an X, which is why it should have had an X. They both have a Y squared. But when I get to the Z, this part B has a Z to the third and a Z to the first. So you have to take the smaller one of the two because they have to have it in common. And a Z does not have a Z to the third in common. Questions on 15. Alrighty, what I want you to do is I want you to try 16 on your own. Can you come up with a GCF for 16 on your own? Yes. Okay, let's look at the numbers. Between 12 and 8, what would the GCF be just if we were looking at 12 and 8? 4. So my advice to you, if this was multiple choice, which I know it's not, but if it was multiple choice, look at all the answer choices. If one of them does not have 4 at the front, go ahead and mark it out because even if you don't know what to do with the letters, you can narrow it down like I did on number 15. I marked out C and D on 15, and even if I had to choose, it'd be a 50-50 chance. 6. What bracelet price should the company set to earn its maximum profit? So the X value would be the bracelet price, and the max profit would be the Y. If the vertex is 4, so that'd be negative 16 over 2. Yeah, it'll be $4. It's the profit that's in thousands of dollars, not the price of the bracelet. So $4. You good? All right. So even we teachers have to talk through the problem sometimes. But what I was saying is if one of them doesn't have 4 at the front, mark it out. At least if you had to guess, you've narrowed down your chances. All right, now let's look at each letter. We have an E and an E. So do I write it down? Yep. Yes, and we also have a D and a D. I don't know why I missed it. So D and D is what I meant to say. Then we have an E to the 4th and an E to the 1st. Which one do I put down? E to the 1st, which is just E. Then I have an F squared and an F squared. So since they're the same, I just put it down. And a G and a G. So the biggest part there was knowing the number and what to do with letter E. Lily, can you move that stuff off your desk so I can see you? All right, I want you to do number 17 and number 18 on your own because this goes with the last thing we just did. Then we'll take a stretch break before I go into a little mini lesson for you. Dylan, I apologize, but can you close that door one more time? Thank you. All right, I'm going to stop the video there for people who might be watching from home.